Hello, and welcome back to the studio. I'm Dr. Wiggo, and today I'm going to tell you why I am buying the Apple Vision Pro Day 1. Although many of you probably can already guess from watching the channel why. And we'll get to that. But first, I'm going to put on my Dr. Wiggo Business School professor hat and kind of talk about the history of Apple. So if you don't care about all that stuff, then just skip ahead, and the next chapter will be about the technology of the Vision Pro and why it's so damn cool. Although I'm sure you've probably watched hundreds of videos by now. I know I have. The chapter after that will be about the interface and how cool that is. But then the chapter after that, I'll tell you why I'm going to buy it and all the reasons that I think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. Seriously. This is like, I think, one of the ground-shaking inventions. Let me run through the history of Apple now, and I'll kind of tell you why I think this is on par with the original Macintosh. By the way, I am wearing a 40-year-old t-shirt, which is, I got this when I bought my original Mac in 1984 when it first came out. This is what they call the Picasso logo. Let me get Tom Hughes and John Casado, two Apple artists, came up with this fantastic logo. The t-shirt has a hole in it here and there, but this is a 40-year-old t-shirt. I'm thinking some of you aren't that old. Let's talk about Apple and Steve Jobs and Tim Cook, which has been the subject of countless things. Now, by the way, as a business school professor, I have been teaching the Apple case for 30 years. And I bought my first Mac 40 years ago when I was an IT consultant on Wall Street. Have I mentioned I wrote for Mac User Magazine? And so I have been around analyzing Apple and the Macintosh, well, and all things Apple, and then teaching about it for 40 years. I know a little bit about it. Let's start at the beginning. In 1977, that's when the Apple II came out, which was the first mass market personal computer. Yeah, there had been an Apple I, but it wasn't mass market. It was more of a kit. This was, you could like buy it and plug it in and, well, not just go, but anyway. It cost $1,298 in 1977. That is $6,500 in today's money. And if you remember the Apple II, it was like just a little command line. It had almost no memory. It was compared to the computers of today, there's like a transistor in an iPhone that has more power than that computer had. But people shelled out $6,500 for it. You might get a hint of where I'm going with the price thing. Steve Jobs then had a vision. When his vision, hey, tied into the title. His vision was a computer for every person in the world. The true personal computer. And by the way, when the Apple II came out, there were people, people that ran computer companies who said, there's no reason for anyone to have a computer in their home. That was the CEO of Digital Equipment, a defunct computer manufacturer. The next big leap forward takes place in 1984 with the introduction of the Macintosh for $2,500, which is $7,200 in today's money. That's an interesting figure because that's almost just over double what they want for the Apple Vision Pro. So, and I paid $7,200, well, $2,500, but it was the equivalent of $7,200 today in 1984. What you get with the Apple Vision Pro for $3,500 compared to, the $2,500 Mac had 128K of memory. It had a 9-inch black and white screen. It had a floppy disk. It didn't even have a hard drive. And it was amazing. So up till now, they've sold over 270 million Macintoshes. So that's been a little popular product. The PC, all the clones, all that stuff happening in the 80s, which led to, in 1996, Time Magazine doing a cover story called The Fall of an American Icon. So at this time, I'm now teaching. The Harvard Business School publishes cases for using in business courses, and they used to always have a case about Apple. But every few years, they'd rewrite it. And around the time of this magazine cover, the cases started being, well, Apple's doomed, they're going to fail, they have no chance. By the way, Steve Jobs is gone at that point, right? He'd been forced out. Then he came back. And here comes iPod. Now, that was only $399. It was a consumer electronic product. And by the way, that's $683 in today's money. So it was much cheaper. But it didn't do, well, y'all know what an iPod is. But by 2005, that led to the Business Week cover about how Apple and Steve Jobs are the be-all and end-all. Oh, by the way, of course, Harvard has updated its case now to, oh, look how fantastic Apple is, and they're going to be great. Don't worry, there'll be another Harvard case coming in a few years. It said, oh, Apple's doomed. Now, then 2007, we all know this date. This is the iPhone, the thing that changed Apple. In fact, it changed Apple so much, I no longer use the Apple case in my teaching, because the thing about the Apple case was for years, it was the best example of related constrained diversification and how you can leverage, get synergies across divisions. Once iPhone was 60% of their revenue, they're an iPhone company. All this other stuff is sidelines, including the Vision Pro. We are going to get back to that. That is what the video is about. When the iPhone came out, everyone poo-pooed it, just like they poo-pooed the Apple II and the Macintosh and the iPod. Everybody said, oh, yeah, it's flash in the pan. Nokia and BlackBerry, well, it doesn't have a physical keyboard. No one's going to buy that. And Steve Ballmer, who was the CEO of Microsoft at the time, there's no chance that Apple is going to get any significant market share. No chance. The iPhone is the largest selling, it may even be the largest selling phone in the world, but certainly the largest selling smartphone in the world, even though it costs up to 3 to 4 times as much as the competition. And by the way, there's one iPhone. Well, they have models, but I mean, that's all come from Apple. They have Android phones from dozens of manufacturers. It can't supplant it. Android can't do it. Now, this is when, not long, sadly, after this, Steve Jobs passed away. And then, all the Harvard cases and everything got to be about, well, without Steve Jobs, they're doomed. Well, finally, the Apple Watch comes out, and everybody says, okay, well, maybe there's a thing going on here. Now, Steve Jobs was probably around when the ideas were forming. Before we move on, let me just talk about Steve Jobs for a minute. So first, his vision was a personal computer for everybody. But then his vision, and if you go back, you can go back and see things he did in the 80s, where he talks about an Alan Kay concept called the Dynabook. And basically, it was going to be like a book, the size of a book that you carried around with you at all times, that had all the knowledge of the world in it. And you could do anything, and you could look up anything and find anything. Does this sound familiar? That's the iPad. And in fact, if you go back and read the history, the iPhone came out of the development of the Dynabook. They were trying to make the Dynabook, which ended up being an iPad, but they couldn't get the touch screens big enough. So they could only go with a small screen. And so they're going, well, what can we do with a small screen? And somebody said, well, we can make it a phone. So that's where the iPhone was a stepping stone on the way to Steve Jobs' vision of all of us carrying around a device that would have all the knowledge in the universe and connect us to everything. By the way, it turned out that the phone was good enough. The iPad just makes it a little easier. Yeah, but the Vision Pro, well, we're getting there. 2015, the Apple Watch comes out. And everybody, oh, that's going to be a piece of junk. I want to point out that just based on rumors that Apple was working on a smartwatch, Samsung had 6 or 7 models of smartwatch that they had been rolling out in the intervening years waiting for Apple. The Apple Watch sold more units its first weekend than Samsung had sold of all the models of the smartwatches that they had brought over at all the previous years. Apple knocked them aside in one weekend. Well, now this brings us to 2024. It's only 2023. Yeah, but the Apple Vision Pro isn't coming out in 2023. It was announced, but it's shipping in 2024 for $34.99, $3,500. Less than half the price of the original Macintosh, which I ran out and bought. You really don't have to watch this video to know I'm buying one of these things, but I'm going to tell you all the reasons in a minute. But that's kind of the history of how we got here. Oh, and by the way, there were some changes in the business models. Now, Apple III and Macintosh were brand new products. I mean, they were groundbreaking. The iPod, the iPhone, the Apple Watch, and to some extent the Apple Vision Pro are just building on existing products, existing concepts. They're just expanding. There were already MP3 players, but they weren't as easy to use. Oh, and this is going to come up a lot. There were already smartphones, but they weren't as easy to use. There were already watches, smartwatches, but they weren't as easy to use. And there were already VR and AR headsets, but they aren't as easy to use. See where I'm going with this? Apple lets people go out and set up categories and get things going, and then they come in with their bulldozer and build a giant steamroller, and then they come rolling over and mow down everybody in their path. By the way, this was back in the 70s when I worked for IBM. That was their model. They'd let other people blaze the trails with the machetes, and then they'd build their bulldozer and steamrollers and just come rolling over them. And by the way, crushing the people who were out in front. Well, that's what Apple has done with MP3 players, with smartphones, with smartwatches, and now I'm pretty sure they're going to do it here. We're going to talk more about where the Apple Vision Pro. I keep touching my PSVR 2 because this is my prop for later. Yes, this is what the Apple Vision Pro has relegated the PSVR 2 to a prop, a $500 prop. So that's kind of my history of Apple to get us up to where we are today. So let's talk about the technology of the Apple Vision Pro. It starts with the displays. The display, they're micro OLEDs, 64 pixels in the space of one iPhone pixel, because they're little tiny, postage stamp size. Those pixels are 7.5 microns wide, so then there's 23 million of them across the two little screens. And they designed a 3-element lens to make it all, so it's all perfectly sharp and clear. This was my disappointment with this guy, the PSVR 2. Yes, they went with OLED screens, but they couldn't get them bright enough to work the way they wanted with normal lenses, so they went with the Fresnel lenses, which if they get out of sync with your eye, you get chromatic aberration, you get colors above and below, and I cannot fix that. Turns out, by the way, it's because of my hair. It won't grip my head because it slides on my hair. And by the way, if you go watch the videos where everybody says, oh, people that can't get it to work are just wearing it wrong. They're all bald or have shaved heads. Well, yeah, if you don't have any hair in the way, it's not going to slide around. Mine slides around. It is unusable. It gives me headaches. It's horrible. And I can tell already with this LED technology that they've got in here, I may get headaches, but it won't be because the picture's out of focus. Then they went on with the spatial audio, and this is where with this one, you have to plug things into your ears or wear headphones. This has these cool little things that are firing down right into your ear. They're right above your ear, and they're firing into your ear. If you have AirPods, which I'm sure most of you do, I don't because I don't like things in my ears. This will be, the Apple Vision Pro will be my first experience of Apple's spatial audio, which I hear is amazing. It's like Dolby Atmos, but right by your ears, so that you get a full 360-degree sound field right at your ears. Pretty cool. Now we get into the hardware. Everyone keeps complaining about the price. When you look at all this stuff that's in here that I'm about to run through, you're going to go, well, how is it only $3,500 with all that stuff? By the way, I'm going to link some reaction videos down below. And in one of them, I think somebody from The Verge says, current VR headsets, it's like strapping an Android phone to your face. The Apple Vision Pro is strapping a MacBook Pro to your face. It's a whole other level. Well, let's talk about it. Just the sensors. So there's two main cameras, two side, two down, and an IR emitter so that it can see in the dark. Then there's a LiDAR scanner and a true depth camera for, mapping out your room and doing anything that involves 3D in your space. Then you have the infrared cameras and the illumination rings for the eye tracking, and Optic ID. The Optic ID, it's not a retina scan like we all thought from science fiction, but it's an iris scan because irises are also unique, just like your retinas, even for identical twins. Said so in the video. Then we get to the brain, and again, an M2 chip, the same chip in the MacBook Pro, But then they have this new chip, the R1 chip, and this is what really sets the Apple Vision Pro apart from any other headset. With this R1 chip, it can handle all of the inputs that I'm about to run through. 12 cameras, 5 sensors, 6 microphones, and it can handle all those inputs in real time with a less than 12 millisecond lag. I'm sure all of you know, if you've watched enough of these videos, this is not the product that Tim Cook wants. Tim Cook's vision is AR, augmented reality. He wanted a pair of glasses that would do all this. Where are you going to fit an M2 processor, an R1 processor, and all these sensors and everything into a pair of glasses? They're going to do it. I believe in Apple, and we are the alpha testers. Those of us who buy the Vision Pro, we are testing it for Apple and funding their future development. Now, they've already spent billions on this project, and they're going to spend many billions more. They're going to get it right. I don't understand all these people saying, oh, it's going to be a failure. It can't be a failure. If nothing else, it's going to generate the data they need to improve it and come up with better technologies. I just saw Zuckerberg had a statement. I don't think it was an official statement. I think it was something he said to his employees. He said, well, I'm glad to see that Apple didn't come up with any ideas we hadn't already thought of. Yeah, but you haven't done it. Yeah, they're the ones with the jerky interface and the Android phone strapped to your face. Oh, and then the EyeSight OLED display. Let's talk. This is adding hundreds of dollars of product cost. There's an OLED display on the outside. Instead of having, like all other headsets that just have a blank thing people are looking at, they put this OLED display so that it can show other people your eyes, but not actually show them your eyes. The camera is going to record your eyes and then play them through this screen so it looks like they're looking at your eyes. Well, they're looking at your eyes, but they're looking at a camera version of your eyes on this OLED screen, which they also then use for this really cool avatar generation where, you like use the headset to scan your head and it makes a 3D creepy it's creepy now. It'll get better. You know how these things are. But you generate the avatar, and then when you're interacting with people, like in FaceTime and things, they can see you and they can see your actual expressions because the cameras are recording what's going on in your face, and it's putting that onto the avatar. And then there's the Vision OS, the software for this. It's got to be just billions of lines of code. I've worked on some big software projects back in the day. This makes them all look like toys. And part of the Vision OS is that foveated rendering, which this guy does too, but where it primarily renders where your eyes are looking. And of course, it knows exactly where your eyes are looking. And so that will always be the sharpest focus, which is why you're going to be able to read text and all the things they promised in the videos. And then, of course, there's the design with the modular system, because this is the biggest problem with these headsets. If you're going to wear them for any length of time, they're heavy. I mean, just putting a pound on your head and it pushes down on your nose and presses into your head, they're heavy and it can be uncomfortable. So they've got this modular system where you can replace the band, you can replace what they call the light seal. Apparently, when you go to buy these, you're not going to be able to just buy one online. Well, at first, you're going to have to actually go to an Apple store to get fitted, because they're going to get to the shape of your head, and they're going to have multiple of these light shields that they'll get one that fits you and doesn't put too much pressure on. I didn't even mention that they have the Zeiss lenses that you're going to be able to order for if you need glasses, because you won't be able to wear glasses inside this thing, but they'll put the glasses in it for you. I'm sure that will be an additional cost. Now where the magic starts to happen is in the interface. They use the concepts that you're familiar with from their previous products. So there's a digital crown. We all have the digital crown on our Apple Watches, so we're used to that as a control mechanism, and they put one up there. There's also a button on the other side to take pictures, which you attach the digital crown, and the home screen comes up, floating in front of you, and then you use your eyes to select. And then you just tap your fingers to select, and they don't have to be, it's not like, you can just have it in your lap and just tap, and then flick to scroll, and then you can use your voice. Now, if you're like me, Siri does not understand me 90% of the time, so I'm not real thrilled about the voice stuff. They didn't really show this in any of the videos, but it will pop up a virtual keyboard that you can type on in space. And you'll also be able to use real keyboards with it. And then there's a 3D camera built in. This had to add hundreds and hundreds of dollars to the price of this thing. Side opposite digital crown, there's a button that's like your shutter, and you can take 3D photographs or videos. Matty Happoja, I'll link his video down below. He said this is going to change filmmaking because you can have this 3D, it's like you're actually there. Then we get to cinema vision. You go to watch, consume content, and you can resize the screen and make it as big as you want, and you have the spatial audio firing into your ears. And then you can get the complete immersion where you can make the background go away, so it's no longer a screen floating in your room, it's now a screen floating wherever you want to be. In one of the videos, they showed an example of a woman on an airplane where you just turn that on and you're in a movie theater. Now, on the airplane, you need to have the things poked in your ears, so this isn't going to work for me. And then one of the coolest features, if you have your Mac sitting in front of you, you're like your MacBook Air, which they also announced a new one of, you can just look at the screen, and then your Vision Pro will pick up that screen, and you can now blow it up, and you can now work your Mac using the Vision Pro as your interface. Instead of using the keyboard and the trackpad, you'll be doing it with your eyes. And Disney is on board. By the way, you shouldn't have been surprised at that, because Disney has been in business, was in business with Steve Jobs. The Pixar thing, they bought Pixar and they had a lot of stock in Apple. And in fact, there was always a Disney person on the board of Apple up until either Disney Plus or Apple TV Plus, because then they became competitors. And so then they had to get the Disney people off the board. The Disney part, where Disney Plus is going to have the full interface with the screen immersion and the whole thing. And they showed a bunch of that, and you can watch The Mandalorian. Oh, and then like the X-ray stuff, like from Amazon Prime, where you got all this extra content, where you can have that all on the screen at the same time. And Disney knows if you buy one of these, you will subscribe to Disney Plus forever because of all the content. Now let's get to why am I buying it, which of course by now you already know, right? Because it's amazing. Because I have to have it. I bought the Macintosh day one. I stood in line all day to buy an iPhone on day one. The real reason I'm buying is because I can. And because, and this was on the thumbnail, so you should have guessed by now, 3D is back, baby. Oh my God. If you go watch my video, which I will link below, of when I got my big screen TV for the living room, well, they had stopped making 3D TVs at that point. So I have a 83-inch OLED, phenomenal thing. And if you watch that video, you'll see the two things I'm most disappointed is that I couldn't get it bigger and I couldn't get it in 3D. Guess what the Vision Pro does? It lets me make a big screen that's bigger than my screen and have it be in 3D. The Disney Plus thing. Marvel movies are all released in theaters in 3D. Don't forget Apple TV Plus, which, by the way, remember, we still have the store. Now you'll be able to buy 3D movies, which you can't really do anymore. The 3D Blu-rays have kind of petered out. I love 3D. I love that sense of immersion. Basically, it's going to replace my TV. My TV will be for watching TV. I'm a YouTube guy, so what do? I watch YouTube videos all day. A lot of them you don't want to, you don't have to pay close attention. So I like to do puzzles and work on my iPad. Well, now I can do that. I can have the YouTube window here, and I can have the game here, and I can be playing my game and watching the YouTube video all right in front of me. I won't be looking down to the iPad and back up here. It'll all be right in front of me. I'm going to be in heaven. You've watched all the stuff, and you go, well, I don't know. I'm not sure Apple sold me on this. People like me, I just had to see it and go, okay, I'm going to get that. Now, a lot of people said, well, I don't know. What's it going to feel like? But here is, and I'm linking a bunch of these below. Brian Tong did a panel of people who had actually used it, and I think there was one person who hadn't used it. The Verge, and The Verge had MKBHD, the Waveform podcast on with their podcast, and Elly Awesome. So I'll link a bunch of the reaction videos of the people who actually wore it. And of the people who actually wore it, I think only one or two of them said, I don't know. Almost every one of them said, absolutely, I'm sold. I'm going to get one. Or I'm going to want one even if I can't afford one. I'm going to get one. there will be an unboxing on this table in the future in 2024, I hope. I will be unboxing one of these and putting it on, and then that may be the end of my YouTube career because I may never make another video because I'll just be sitting down in my living room. That was Ready Player One. I don't know if you all noticed in the video when the guy puts on the, well, here, I'll put them side by side for you to look at. But when the guy puts on the headset for the first time, it's exactly the same tracking shot as in Ready Player One when he puts on the headset for the first time in the movie. Ready Player One is a movie about a dystopian future where everybody goes into virtual reality to escape the hellhole that they live in. And I think a bunch of you may be saying, well, maybe I'll just get one of these and go live in there because the world out there is turning crazy. That's why I'm buying an Apple Vision Pro. Primarily for the 3D. I may use it for computing stuff. I don't think the headset's going to be a problem for me. And if it is, I'm going to learn to live with it because damn, this thing looks amazing. I cannot wait to have one on my head. Does that sound weird? That's the Apple Vision Pro. That's why I'm getting it. Well, that's my take on the Apple Vision Pro. I'm sure you've seen lots of takes. My take's probably not very different, but I'm going to get one. I have to have one. I wish I had one now. I wish I still had my contacts inside Apple back when I was at Mac User Magazine where I could get an early version. Thanks for stopping by. Come back next week. I have a little surprise. See you then. Bye-bye.